changed totally the history of Douro in 1986. So it changed the laws because before then it was not possible to mention Douro on the label of a still wine, just the
Right.
port.
Welcome to the wine-centric show inside the Farrington House wine cellar. And we go out to Europe today. We go to Portugal, to the Douro River Valley. And there we meet with this wonderful, amazing couple who have changed the world of dry wines in Portugal. They are the proprietors and creators of Wine and Soul, Ms. Sandra Tavares and Jorge Borges. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Big pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. Jorge, my Portuguese is not well, so please pardon my pronunciation of your name. I hope I did it right. But by the end of this episode, I expect to be speaking fluent Portuguese. I'm a quick learner.
I hope you do.
Yes. Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate it. Tell me, the story of Portugal of the wine is so linked with port. And this is on the backdrop of, I'm sure you're aware that all the regions of the world that make fortified wines are trying to get this as a UNESCO site, or I forget exactly what it is, but
it is.
But basically it's to be protected.
Yeah.
Heritage.
Heritage site. There we go. You can't tell the story about Portuguese wine without talking about port wine. How did this change? And also tell me, why was it that port wine became of the fashion in Portugal?
For the Douro, it's one of the oldest wine regions in the world. So we have demarcation since 1756. And I'm a good example about the story about the Douro, because I'm coming from a very traditional family that works on the wine business for many generations. And I'm the first one in the family who was making dry wines. So before me, my father, grandfather, great-great-grandfather, they just made port. And the business and the region was like that, was full port production. So 100% of the grapes that were produced in the region were driven to port. And that was more or less like that, 100% until the latest 90s of the last century, when the port production the port sales starts to decrease a bit. And it was a result as well of an increase of area of vineyards planted in the region. So that means that the new vines that were planted on the 80s, when they start producing grapes, those grapes were not anymore useful for port because the port demand was not increasing as the production did.
But not speaking to the quality of the grapes, it was just speaking to that the sales of port were declining. So the idea was to make more dry wine. But correct me if I'm wrong, but there was always a history of locally making dry wine. You just couldn't call it Douro or port wine. Is that right? Like locally in local restaurants, local bars, you would have dry wines.
Yeah, always. But was not really important for the region, that those wines were made by the cooperatives. And there is the biggest example of someone that tried to make a real great red wine from the Douro was Barca Velha, but the winemaker was someone that was completely thinking about out of the box. He made the first Barca Velha in the 1950s. That was one of the very few examples of dry wines that existed before the 90s.
Did you have the wine, Jorge?
Yes, I had.
You have.
In fact,
I wanted to mention that changed totally the history of Douro as well. It was when Portugal entered the European Community, so in 1986. So it was changed the laws of it was not allowed to have a monopoly of port wine in the Douro, so it was opened to produce other types of wines. So that's why, because before then it was not possible to mention Douro on the label of a still wine, just the port.
So tell me about how that came about, because, you always say in life, oh, you follow the money. And well, I guess I'm explaining the answer myself. So port wine sales were declining. Portugal then sees that and says, okay, well, let's join the European Union, I guess, for economic security. Is that what was driving that? Because historically, all the port houses were owned by the British, right?
Not all.
Because the
Majority,
British,
yes.
but not all. There was
Not all
a
of
few
them,
not
but
all.
the
There
big
were
houses that we know, like for example, in the United States, Taylor's,
yes,
things like this, they were owned by
that's true.
the British people. Yeah. And that's why port wine had become so popular prior to the 80s, is that the British Empire was consuming these wines and exporting these wines all over helping to export the popularity of these wines all over the world. So sales start to decline. Do we have any idea why? Because now we know that, people are drinking less alcohol. And of course, with port wine is higher in alcohol, higher in sugar. But why at that time in the 80s did port wine just decline?
I think the port wine was a wine that was the people were drinking the port on a longer lunch and longer dinners, and the tradition for this kind of meals was starting to change. So the people had no time to drink port. They want to eat faster. So they had no time, to have an aperitif, to have a dessert wine. And that, I think that was the beginning of for
Of the
all
change.
this kind of the change. This kind of wines that was trying to disappear, to
sense.
be unfashion. And I think that was the first thing that's really started to damage to affect the quantity of port wine that was sold all over the world.
So cut to Sandra, your story is a little different. You grew up in a different region around the town of Lisbon. And
Yes.
if I remember correctly, it was your father's idea to start planting a vineyard. Is that right?
Yes, it was. So he decided. So my parents, we were living in Lisbon. We had some backgrounds on the farming, but my father was a Navy officer. And so he was traveling majority of the big time of the years. So he was away. And he decided in mid-80s that he wanted to spend more time with the family. So he wanted to start a new project together with the family. And so we bought a property and he planted the first vineyard.
That just makes me think, assuming this might be a stupid question, but he was in the Portuguese Navy, yeah?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Because obviously in the world, I don't know, the outsider, the American, we don't think that much of Portugal besides outside of Lisbon, of this great place of like an entryway on the western edge of Europe, the best price flights to get into Europe, right? To go to Lisbon from the States. But also the other things we know is that the Portuguese have this unbelievable naval history of exploration. So I guess maybe that ran in your father's blood.
Yes, it was. The Navy is really important to Portugal, and especially because we have a huge coast. And also Portugal being part of NATO. My father was a lot of time in missions with NATO along the coast and in the islands. So that's why he really loved, and he was always on the ships. But then he decided to change his life and start a new project. At the property we bought, it used to be lots of vineyards. So we replanted everything and he started at Quinta Chocapalha.
At Chocopaya. So then at some point, Sandra, you decided to go off and work in other wine regions around the world. You caught the wine bug and decided then to come back and kind of grow Chocopaya outside of Lisbon. And then somehow you made it over to the Douro.
Yes. So I realized that when I finished my studies and I realized that the only region in Portugal that I never been before was and this was in 1999. It was Douro Valley. Douro was really far away and very difficult to reach at that time. There was there was any highway that would take all the way. So it took a long time to reach from Lisbon to Douro. But I was really curious to know more about port wine, and I just see pictures of Douro Valley. So I decided to go, and I was really amazed with the region. It's the region that was so protected and so genuine and with so much tradition and legacy, and especially the old vines. I was so always, and still I am, so amazed and fascinated about the old vineyards of the Douro Valley.
Yeah. And it was hard. It's hard to get there because the region is so mountainous, right?
Yes.
I mean, we think about the river, but it's so mountainous that I guess, so they either have to take a helicopter, a horse, or drive all around the road.
Now it's much easier, but at that time it was hard because there were no highways. Now we have very good roads, so it's easy. It takes time, but it's easy.
The good old European Union, right? You can thank them for that, I assume, for building roads.
Let me just give an example. I was a kid driving from the Douro, where I lived all the time, to Porto city. It took us 4 hours by car. Now we do it in an hour. So it's on 30 to 40 years, it's a big, big change.
See, this is the blessing of modern technology, right? This is the beautiful things of modern technology. Plus, Sandra and George, I'm just going to take 1 minute to pause because we're talking about the beauty of the Douro River Valley. And we have a new sponsor on the Wine Centric Show that can take you there and have a whole wellness and wine experience there with Conscious Strong and Lauren McLaughlin. And check it out.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. Yes, I'm Lauren McLaughlin, and I'm the founder of Conscious Strong, and just newly launched a Conscious Taste of Travel, which will bring about this interest in wellness and wine that has been a passion of mine for pretty much all my adult life. So that is in essence what I do. My background as a master Pilates trainer and guide led me to travel and led me to taking groups that then encompasses the love of wine.
I love that fusion, the combination of wellness and wine. So Conscious Taste is an extension of Conscious Strong, where you are going to curate these retreats.
Yes.
You're going to encompass wellness, meaning that the morning could be a conversation, it could be a walk, it could be a hike, it could be a yoga class. And then there's obviously going to be wine tasting and great food along with that as well, and great conversation to enhance the mind, the body, the spirit. Did I get that all right?
You did. You said that so beautifully.
Okay, that's Lauren at consciousstrong.com. Go to consciousstrong.com, look up Conscious Taste, email Lauren at consciousstrong.com, and you will curate an amazing wellness and wine experience that will, dare I say, change your life. And also, we are going to talk about Heather Donovan, the realtor extraordinaire. You have heard me talk about this wonderful person on the show many times. And guess what? She's here in person today. That's right. The realtor extraordinaire in the Triangle of North Carolina, Miss Heather Donovan. Heather, why did you decide to become a realtor?
Honestly, it's meeting the people. I mean, I've had some seriously beautiful, emotional closings, and you walk out of those someday, or seeing someone achieve their dream of buying their first home. I just had someone this year in their 50s that they were buying their first home, and like how exciting they were. And then there's personal touchers, like a buyer leaving a seller a gift, and they may not have realized was so meaningful. Like I had one last week that fit that category, and I drove home the whole way home like, this is why I love what I do.
Heather Donovan is truly a great resource. If you are looking for a home or just need great advice about all things realty, check out heatherdhomes.com. That's heatherdhomes.com. Okay, we're going to get into how you guys met in a second, but Sandra, you were making wine at Chacopaya, went over to the Douro and started, I guess, as like we would call an intern or a stage. And then within a year or something, you were made head winemaker. Do I have that right?
Silva.
That's a pretty unbelievable climb to glory there.
No, I think I was lucky. I really was and still am very passionate. And when I had made the first internship at Quinta Valdona Maria with Cristiano Vanzeller, in the end of the harvest, he hired me as a winemaker. So I was really happy.
That was the end of the 90s, early 2000. You were making...
Yes.
You were making dry wines then, or you were making
dry and port wines, both?
Oh, you're making both. Okay.
Both.
So how does it? So you become head winemaker there. How then do you meet this handsome man over here?
It was. It was
more
harvest.
the other way around, you know.
You met this beautiful woman over here. All right.
Yes.
So what was it like? The sun was shining off the river. You saw her in the vineyards. Yeah.
Exactly that. So I was working at the time at Newport with Dirk Newport. We went, during the harvest time. Dirk told me, tonight we'll have dinner at Quinta de Valdona Maria. So I knew Christian, but I didn't knew about Sandra. And Yeah, it was when we arrived at the house. So Christiane was there, Sandra was there, and it was really the first moment that I saw her. And from that day on, I did not give up. So simple,
Seriously.
so simple as that. Yeah,
It makes it easier with good wine, right? They loosen up a little bit. It's a little easier for conversation. But was
it
Sandra hard to
helps.
get?
It
Is she
was
very
very
hard
hard to get.
Yeah,
No, really hard, really hard.
I bet
So
she
I
had a
was
wine career.
So she was working at Cristiano at Quinta de Valdenameria as an intern. And when the harvest was finished, she went back to Lisbon. And lucky for me, Cristiano hired her a month or 2 months later to be a winemaker at the property. So I was very happy with that.
Okay, so this all happened very quickly. You guys met. Sandra, you rose to become a head winemaker. And then by 2001, you had already decided, well, I guess you had kept your regular job, but you were going to start this side project called Wine and Soul.
Exactly.
So tell us about what inspired you to do that and what was the first step you took?
Oh, in fact, it was the year that we decided to get married, and we really wanted to make a wine together in order to grow together, to be able to create something from our that we dreamed of, and it was very natural. So we really started to idealize the style of the wine that we wanted to make and how we could make it, and we made a plan, and it was very natural.
I think that ideas. So first of all, you have to know that the Douro at that time was really emerging for the still wines. You know, we were a group of winemakers, all on the 20s, and that were, we did university or in the south, as Sandra did. I did in the north. So many people from more or less the same age were looking to produce red wines from the Douro and not just port. So we did a trip. That was the beginning of our story. We did a trip to Bordeaux, where we spent a week or 2 weeks, I don't remember, tasting and visiting wineries and tasting with other French winemakers and Italian as well, tasting blinds, many different wines mostly from France. And we were not very happy because on those blind tastings, any of the Portuguese wines that were on the tasting did succeed, was not recognized as the good ones as the others. And honestly, when we were driving back home, because we went by car, we said, come on, we should come back one day with our own wine, to prove to this man that Portugal and special Douro has the terroir, the perfect terroir to produce great wines as they do. And that was the beginning of our story. So from that on, we start to dream about the project, to make a plan, as Sandra was saying. Maybe we should make a red wine. Where are we going to make the red wine? What we need for that? And then the first decision we took, it was that we need a vineyard, because the other option was just to buy the fruit. So we were searching for the right vineyard on the right place with the conditions that we thought that were the perfect ones to make it. And finally, we bought a small vineyard with only 2 hectares in 2001. And the first vintage was a one.
That's an amazing rise to prominence. And I believe it was this vineyard, right? The Pintas?
Exactly. That one. Yeah. The one I have on the glass as well.
Beautiful. All right. We're synergistic here. Okay. So let's talk about because I think what people get confused upon from the consumer perspective is you have great wine regions of the world, right? You mentioned Bordeaux. Oh, well, we know in Bordeaux, there's Cabernet Sauvignon and there's Merlot and Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot and what else? And then we know, in Burgundy, you have Pinot Noir. We know in California, Napa Valley. We know in Côte Rôtie, you have Syrah. In Portugal, it's not like that. You have these various grapes. As a matter of fact, that Pintas, I think there's 5 varietals on this, and in the character, there's over 30 varietals. Is that something? Okay, this is a 2-part question. Is that something that you think will always be? Or do you think as the terroir changes and you have more and more history of dry wines that you will drill down, so to speak, into focusing on only a few varietals? How do you see that going?
First, I believe that that's our biggest treasure. It's really the diversity we have. So Portugal has over 300 different grapes. In the Douro Valley, we can find more than 90 different grapes. And seriously, the field blends that we find in the Douro Valley are really special. And what we have seen all along these years, especially the identity of the plots and resilience of these old vineyards with a combination of the different varieties really make wines with a huge complexity and resilience and consistency.
Okay.
And
Sorry,
from the
what were
other
you gonna
point of view, it's very unique, you know. So the vintage, for instance, the one you have with you, it's a wine that it's made from 40 different grapes, 40 different grapes, indigenous varieties that they are all planted mixed in the same vineyard. So it's the field blend. And, you know, when you want to produce something to sell, you need first quality, and then you need authenticity, identity. And this is something very unique we have in the Douro. So if you are able to produce a wine with the standard of quality that you want, you know, to compete with the big ones in the world, and being different, that's an advantage, I believe so. And then you have to think about this vineyard in particular, the vintage vineyard. It's a 95 years old vineyard. So the field blend that we have there today has been selected over the years. It was a natural selection over the years, you know, that's what we get today is grapes that they match. They are perfect. They really fit very well where the place where it is, with the soil, with the climate conditions, and it's perfect. This blend we have. So it's a part of our terroir, you know. And once again, you have quality and you have uniqueness.
For sure. I just think, and that makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense that, oh, you had all these different varietals going back from your history of making port fortified wines. And now the switch over, and especially how the quality of these wines, being that some of these vines are 95 years old, is second to none. The question that I'm asking is, like I said, is more from a consumer perspective, in that I think I mean, even from a wine professional perspective, if you haven't been there, and I'll be honest with you, you know, Portugal is probably my biggest weak spot in talking about wine, just because you study it and the names are hard to pronounce and the grape varietals are so vast. And so then we have to say that we have to relay that conversation as wine professionals to the consumer, right? And so what ends up happening is this is a Portuguese red blend. And if you taste it, obviously you're going to see the quality, but the story is a little bit difficult. I don't know if maybe you don't feel the same complexity, but
we feel the same. And that's the weak point of using a field blend, you know, that people don't know. The normal consumer doesn't know the grapes, so he's not so secure about choosing that wine to taste. That's the weak point of working on a field blend. But you know, I just arrived from United States. I was a week in over there. I was very happy to hear some sons that they said to me that the field blend is becoming sexy. This is something that I never heard before. So the people are paying much more attention to the field blend. And honestly, when you have the chance to taste something different, you should go for, you know.
yeah.
And instead of, you know, we can produce, imagine that we choose, instead of using these old vineyards and the field blend grapes, we choose 20 years ago to produce a Douro wine from Cabernet Sauvignon, you know. And I love Cabernet Sauvignon. You know, it's not a question of quality. I love it. Or Syrah, other grapes, you know. It was much less interesting for the consumer to taste another Cabernet Sauvignon from Douro, and I'm not talking about quality, than tasting a wine made from grapes that are not so recognized overseas. You know, it's a question of time. You know, it was not the decision that the winemakers did 30 years ago of making these wines using indigenous grapes was probably not the easiest decision if we think about in the short term. But in a long-term vision, I have no doubt that was the best decision that we could.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Sandra.
No, I believe that we are so lucky, really, with this huge diversity we have, and that and especially on these very old field blends, it's still very hard to explain them, but I think they have so much more identity of the place. And what we have seen, the question of viticulture and in terms of resilience, especially now that with all these climate changes and very extreme climates or droughts, we have seen the amazing resilience and quality we are getting with our own varieties that are planted here for centuries.
Yeah.
So they are so adapted. So we believe this material is our major treasure.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying to unpack that is, like you said, George, you have the unique aspect of it being these are your own indigenous varietals. And then the second part from what you're saying, Sandra, is because they are indigenous, because they're used to this environment, this vineyard has been planted 95 years ago, it is situated to survive, and the field blends let it naturally still produce well despite climatic change. And we'll switch on to another subject, but you think about, like, if you did a parallel, for example, with Tuscany, for example, where they have this one indigenous varietal that they're known for, right? Sangiovese. And it's a very easy story to tell. This is a Sangiovese. Now they still brought in international varietals to confuse the situation and make this, super Tuscan blend, which that's neither here nor there. So I guess what I'm saying here is, it's the story of the field blend. It's a more complex thing to tell, but that's why we're here today, to tell the story. Wine and Soul, where does that name come from?
When we started the company, so we wanted to contribute to the promotion of the Douro wines overseas, outside Portugal. And we thought that having an English name to our company with a message, Wine and Soul, that really reflects our vision about being a winemaker. This is not just a business for us, it's our life. That could help us to promote what we were doing, to promote our company, our wines. So Wine and Soul was the name that we chose because we really feel like it is being a winemaker on the Douro.
Sandra, did you want to add to that?
No, it's true. It's really, we wanted to pass the message, our philosophy on how we live the wine. For us, it's part of our lives and our passions. So we really wanted it to be easy to communicate. In English, it will be easy to attach and to get the message. So it's wines really made with a lot of soul and with our soul.
A very common question that people do to us, it's who is the soul, who is the wine?
It depends on the days.
It depends on the
switches. Yeah. This is neither here nor there for a wine question, but we're called the Wine-Centric Show. So we can and we're talking to winemakers, so we can talk about anything. I've always been so curious about the Portuguese culture and the language in general, because to my ears, Portuguese sounds like a mix of Romance languages and Slavic languages all together. And I'm just wondering where that, because, for those of you who are not too geographically keen, we are on, like I said, the western edge of Europe in the Atlantic Ocean, but you're not far from Africa, from Morocco, and then you're obviously very close to Spain, and then across Spain you have France. So I'm just trying to think about where that history comes from of this unique sounding language. And do you guys think, as Portuguese people, do you think that your language sounds different than anywhere else?
We do.
George, you're in Brazil now, and I know it's like, as Americans, we talk to British people, and for non-English native speakers, they hear us the same. I'm sure if I hear Brazilians and Portuguese speak, it probably sounds the same, but you can probably tell a Brazilian from miles away. But back to my initial question, does the language sound different to your ear than any other people?
I don't know. I never thought about that. We are we have a Latin language. Our language is very similar to Spanish, has a very different sound. I know that, but is similar to Italian as well. The good thing of the Portuguese people is that we can speak very easily Spanish, for instance. The Spanish cannot speak Portuguese. And we can speak Italian as well. Both of us, Sandra and I, by coincidence, we were doing an Erasmus program. So it's a student exchange program in Italy. I was in the south, Sandra was in the north. And both of us, when we were back home, we were speaking fluent Italian. So it's very easy for us to speak those
To hear
languages.
that.
But
Yeah.
the sound is different, Of course,
Now,
some
phonetically, it's
similarities.
totally different.
Yeah. And there's no history of like a Slavic influence, because
No.
it feels like that's just hearing it.
No. Just
Okay.
just the sound.
Just the sound.
No,
Okay.
we have many
We're-
cultures, different cultures, but I don't know really where it comes to the pronunciations and the phonetic comes from, but it's
No,
a
but
big
it's a
mixture.
Latin language, so
Okay. There you go. We'll have to find that answer somewhere
But
else.
it's true. There's so many times that people think that we are from Russia or because our accent is really hard. But it's a beautiful language.
It is a beautiful language. But Jorge, like, I bet you could do a very good Borat impression.
thank you. But
Okay.
you mentioned that I'm in Brazil, So in Brazil they speak Portuguese,
Yeah.
but it's a completely different sound, completely different accent.
Mhm.
And for them to understand me, I need to speak very slow. If I speak
Okay.
Portuguese like I speak at home, no one will understand me. And sometimes I'm getting very, very furious because some people, they answer me on Spanish.
Yeah.
That makes me crazy.
You feel like, we're the ones who invented the freaking language. Speak my way.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But anyway,
Okay.
I love to be here.
So I want to wrap up the conversation about the Douro and then get to Chacapaya a little bit and talk about the other
Mhm.
projects you have going on. But back to the original story, you started this with a very small vineyard, with the Pintas vineyard, and you then were able, I guess, with some success, to acquire other vineyards nearby. And tell me if I have this right, but I think you were trying to acquire vineyards that were also of, obviously, these indigenous varietals, but that had old vines. Is that right? Sandra, I'll start with you.
Yes, so we, as I was mentioned before, we were amazed and fascinated about the old vines, and we wanted to protect as much as we could of these old vineyards. So our first vineyard was Pintas, and then we started step by step buying the surrounding of Pintas vineyards, and for that we created the Pintas character. It's another brand we have. So it's very old vines, pale blends, with beautiful environment as well. We have a lot of forests and olive groves that surrounds our vineyards. So we wanted to keep this environment in order to achieve the identity of each plot. So it started small and it's a bit hectic in a way because we have several little plots spread, but it's the way that we wanted to keep this beautiful diversity and creating wines with a lot of identity.
Yeah. And you have, I think you started with 2.6 hectares, something like that. And
Yes.
now, how many hectares?
Now we own 35 hectares of vineyards.
35 hectares. And still looking, right? Still trying to acquire new vineyards and grow? Or
if there is a very special plot nearby us, there is always could be an opportunity to buy. But we started with reds. And then in 2004, we bought the first vineyards of white. That's where we produced the Guru white. And, all our vineyards are not located on the same place because we are two winemakers that we love to explore very special terroirs. The Douro, it's very rich on diversity in terms of soils, in terms of exposition, and in terms of elevation as well. So, and we have the lucky to work on a region where we are on a mountain. So a mountain, the Douro, it's a mountain region. That means that we have vineyards with an elevation that starts on 100 meters and could go up to 600 meters of altitude. So all our white wines are in between 500 to 600 meters of altitude of elevation, and the reds between 200 to 400 meters. The ports, the lower ones. So I'm telling you this because not many regions has this advantage of having the chance to plant the white wine vineyards that require a very cool climate overnight, and having the altitude where we have this perfect climate to preserve all the minerality and the freshness that the white wine needs. and then going down in the hill to produce red wines that needs a little bit more of sun. So the Douro, on that particular aspect, it's a very unique region. Of course, it's a big problem in terms of mechanization because we are on the slopes of the mountain, so not most of the vines are mechanized, and that's it's very labor depending our farming. But from the quality point of view, it's a big advantage.
Yeah, and I know that's become an issue with labor, especially over the last 10 years. But before we go down that road, I just want to give people an idea, a couple things. I want to categorize the wines so that people can understand, not with tasting notes, but more stylistically. And I also just want to unpack about why we're harping or why we're focusing on old vines. And I've said this before, but if you're not familiar with why old vines are important, let me just give you a very elementary explanation. I'm talking to listeners now. When you have a vine, when you first plant a vine, you can't even make wine of it for at least 3 years. Then from 3 to 10 years, I always compare it to like human beings and my children, because from 3 to 10 years, the fruit that it's producing is very brash and brazen, but it doesn't have a lot of complexity or wisdom, but it's very, forceful. And so you can make like very almost opulent wines. And then once it gets from 10 to 20 years, the vine age, it produces fruit that is a little bit more complicated. It's starting to get a little bit more suave and sophisticated. And then once it hits past 20 years, it really hits a great point where not only is it producing a lot of fruit, but it's producing really beautiful, more complex. And as the older it gets, you start to produce less fruit, but the fruit becomes a lot more complex and interesting. And like humans, gets more wise.
Totally
I'll leave that there. But so that's very important, the vine age. And then characterizing these wines, we've said this word many times, but it is unique because from the reds, like this, the Pintache, which by the way is a really unbelievable wine. This is the 21 vintage. You have wines. It is a big wine, like it's not soft or timid like a Pinot Noir, but it's not Cabernet Sauvignon for Napa Valley, and it's not a Bordeaux blend. These have power, but yet they have this finesse and these exotic flavors that really speak to the Douro Valley. Do I have that right characteristically of how somebody who's never tasted a Douro red blend would kind of experience this wine?
I think the Douro blends, especially from old vineyards, it combines beautiful fruit combined with freshness and some herbal notes. And that's why we love these old field blends, exactly because of the layers. We have several layers because it's different fruits, different grape varieties. So they have each one of them, they will give different types of notes and aromas. And I think I describe normally the Douro red blend like this unique fruity flavors, but are always allied with some herbal, mint, and mineral notes.
Yeah. And
I think
sorry, go ahead, George.
I think the Douro wines, they can perform a very special balance, between fruit. So it's definitely a region that produces fruit, wines with a good expression of fruit and ripeness and riper fruit. But we combine very well nice minerality and freshness. So the schist, the slate soil give us that taste, that minerality that blends so well with this nice fruit we have from our grapes.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. What is it that you guys call the soil? Because it's a blend of shale, schist, and slate. And you have a unique
we call it schisto. Yeah. And we in that particular vineyards, so it's very rocky, slate soil, but we have some clay underneath, like 2-3 meters deep. That is determinant to preserve the humidity, because we are talking about old vineyards that are dry farming, so there is no irrigation on those vineyards. So the water that the grapes use, depending of the rainfall in the winter, and the Douro, as you know, we got some rain during the winter time, and it's very dry since June till October, September. So the grapes, especially the old vines, the roots are very deep, because the only reason for a vineyard to develop the root system, it's looking because of the water. they go deeper and deeper as the water aids. So the Douro, we have that advantage. We find water underneath, and the grapes, they are very, very stable. That's why an old vineyard performs much better than the younger one on a warmer summer, even without any irrigation, because the roots are deep. The plant is on a totally balance, and there is no hydric stress, and that makes a big difference in terms of quality of the grapes when we compare the old vines with the younger ones.
There you go. Strong roots, great vines, great grapes equals great wines. And last question about the Douro, and then I do want to go over to Lisboa. I guess originally, because it's you said this, it's extremely steep. I mean, I think on some of the vineyards, it's almost like a 7th grade level of steepness. Would have been planted originally by the Romans? Did they plant out the Douro River?
They did. They did. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All the vines that exist in the Douro were planted after phylloxera.
Now they were planted, but originally, way back when it was because like you said, it's all a forest. At some point, somebody decided, this would be a good place to plant vine grapes. So
Matthew, you know what a lagar is? Lagar is a stone tank where we still vinify our red grapes with food children. And there are a very few examples of what they call lagar that were digged on the stone, on the rocks of the mountain, from the Roman time. We still use it's used for the fermentation of the red grapes and the port ones as well, where all the grapes are crushed by feet.
It's like a pool, it's like a square, not so high, but we can stump the grapes. And this was invented and so it was used by the Romans at that time. It was crafted on the rocks. It was introduced by the Romans.
And you still use this today? Stone tanks for fermentation?
We use.
Yes, we do.
Okay. And that reminds me, tell us, with the wine and soul wines, the Pintas and the character, they're fermented in stone, and then they do they're aged in oak, but very little new oak. Is that correct?
Yes. That's something that we changed over the years, is the use of the oak. So today, the new oak percentage, it's not more than 15-20%.
Yeah.
But it's in both wines, yes. Yeah. But the minimum time in barrels, it's around between 18 to 22 months.
Okay.
So it's mandatory for us to keep a red wine in the barrels for 2 winters.
2 winters.
Yeah.
Okay. To call it DOC Douro.
No. It's our philosophy.
Our decision.
Okay. And then really quickly, the Guru, that has less varietals. That's, I think, 4 different white varietals. Explain that wine, characterize that wine for somebody who's never had a white wine from the Douro.
Sandra, do you want to do it?
So Guru, for us, it's a very special wine. It was also a dream because we really wanted to create a very classic white wine from the Douro. And that's how we decided to go on the highest spots of the Douro, which is in an area that it's a transition of soil. So we have slate, but we are starting to have some influence of granite and a lot of quartz and micas. It's beautiful, the expression of the soil there. And we have bought several little plots of very old vines with a field blend with these 4 grapes. Majority, it's Fiusinho, Rabigato, Códega, and Gouveia. And we vinify them in barrels, but majority, 95%, it's very neutral barrels. And send for about 10 months to release. So it's a white wine that we describe it as a very mineral, it's very elegant and precise white wine with amazingly long after finish, especially with aging potential. So I think it's so interesting for us even to see the expression of people that never tasting the Douro white wine and tasting Guru. Normally everybody's a bit lost where they are because it's very difficult to identify it as a Douro, especially because nobody knows so much about Douro
Nobody has a reference point for Douro white wine, but I will tell you that I've tasted it. It's absolutely delicious. And it has this, I think, this beautiful, I guess if I had to categorize it, right, or give somebody something familiar, not that it's exactly like this, but I think it does have a similar flavor profile and texturally to Albarino that you would get from like Galicia in Spain. Just in terms of mouthfeel, it's not a light bodied, it's somewhere in the medium body. And then it has teeming with minerality, salinity, and texture. So I would say similar in those. Would you agree? Like there's some parallel there?
I think,
No.
yeah, I agree until we think about the flavors, because the Alvarinho is more tropical,
Okay.
more tropical fruits, and we are not so on that side. But from the texture in the mouth, yes, I
okay.
But the people don't think about the Douro as capacity to produce these mineral white wines, because the area where those vineyards exist, normally the visitors don't go there. It's too far away, it's too high, and the people, when they think about visiting the Douro, they are on the lower altitude, so where it is much hot and dry, and they do not realize that we have this elevation, 500, 600 meters of altitude, where we have these old vineyards, as Sandra was mentioned. We produce a white wine that is made from a vineyard that has more than 100 years old. So it's a unique white wine. It's only 1,500 bottles, but it's a great example of the potential of an old vineyard.
I agree. What would you have your ideal pairing? Give me ideal pairings for the Guru and then the Pintage, or what's the best pairings you've had with it?
I love
Sandra,
it with yes. I love scallops. I think Guru goes beautifully with scallops or lobster. I don't know. So we have beautiful seafood in Portugal. I think we normally we combine it with this type of seafood.
I'm a cheese lover, so I like to pair the Guru. The minerality of the Guru, I think it combines very well with a very old cheese. Very mature cheese. I like it very well.
Yeah. Is there a history of making cheese in the area? Like, are there local cheeses?
Yeah, very good cheese.
What would be an example of? What would be an example?
The most well-known cheese in Portugal is Serra da Estrela. So a translation for English, Star Mountain. So it's the highest mountain we have in the region. It's beautiful.
Cool. Okay.
So it's a cheap milk cheese.
A sheep milk cheese.
Sheep.
Okay.
Yeah. Sheep,
Wait, sheep or cheap? Sheep, like cheap,
sheep,
right?
Yeah. Sheep.
Yeah, okay.
Sheep.
Okay, let's go to the south and west corner for Lisboa and talk about Chocopaia. Now, is that something that you're both working on in Chocopaia, or is that still, or do you mostly work on Chocopaia?
It's mostly me, but of course Jorge helps me as well. But it's mostly I as a winemaker, it's me, and I also have a winemaker assistant there. So that's my family, of course. So it's I'm going there every week. Chocopaia, it's a beautiful property. We are close by Lisbon. We are 45 kilometers northwest of Lisbon. It's an area that it's very traditional for producing wine for centuries. So it's, for instance, Chocopaia, the property, we have references from the 1600s. So it's very old estate, producing wine for so many generations. The climate is beautiful because we have Atlantic influence. So we have clay limestone soils, and then we have very beautiful Atlantic influence. We have very mild climate and very cool mornings and foggy mornings in the properties. So this creates a very long ripening cycle. So beautiful acidity and freshness on our wines, and amazing aging potential as well.
And as far as grape varietals, a little bit easier to understand, because for the white you have mainly Arinto, right?
Yes. And Arinto is the regional indigenous white variety from the region.
Okay. Have they genetically mapped Arinto? Like, is it mapped to anything else? Like, I know Tavares is genetically the same as Tempranillo that you would see in your neighbors in Spain.
Sorry, Matthew. Let me make a correction. It's the opposite way.
Oh,
Tempranillo is like.
I apologize. You're right. I apologize. Okay, so is anything else been? Let me rephrase the question. Is anything to be also Arinto? Like, would we know it as something called something else anywhere else in the world?
As far as I know,
it's originally from there. So, but there's different names from different regions in Portugal. But Arinto is the most well known. Normally, we use Arinto in different areas.
And that also Yeah, go
It's
ahead. Sorry.
Pedernà in the the Vinhos Verdes is also named as Pedernà, but it's mostly people know it as Rinto.
Okay. And for the reds, you're doing more of like traditional. You're using Touriga Nacional, Tintaroris, and Touriga Franca. I say traditional or something that a little
Yes.
bit we're more familiar with. Is that right for like Chocopaya Red? Yeah.
Yes, and Castelão. We have a lot of Castelão that we really love. It's also a variety that it's very common to be planted over there, but also widely planted in south part of Portugal. And also we have Alicante Boucher that we all also love. But it's very interesting because this variety, they could be in the very different profiles because of the soil and the climate over there. So, and mostly it's the finesse and the freshness and this very savory flavors.
And so the main difference there is your coastal influence, like you said, the Atlantic Ocean. Plus, you don't have the same high elevation or mountain and different. And the clay and limestone would be very different than the what's the word it is, George? With the
Schisto.
Schisto. Okay. One of these days I'll get it right. Tell me before we get out of here, how does it work? So, Sandra, you're taking also care of Chocopaya. You have wine and soul together. How is it working as a married couple? Like when it comes to how are the roles, differed? Like you're both the winemakers, or is one of you more focused on the vineyards and one more is focused on in the winery? How does it work?
The major decisions. So about winery, it's the two of us, and we taste together and we make the decisions together. We have an assistant winemaker, Rita, that she works with us already for 20 years. So she's in charge of all the operation daily. Yeah, we love to be with the hands, on the things, in the vineyard as well, at the winery. So we spend a lot of time doing those things. And of course, we have a vineyard manager. We have Rita at the winery, but both of us, we are in charge of all the operations, the major operations. Definitely, it's our decision.
Okay. And Sandra, what's your answer to that question? Because that's like asking a married couple how they met, and you always get a different answer or a different perspective on the story.
No, I agree with George. So we loved all the operations. So we want to be involved in everything. So even we can't be there all the time, but we have a great team too. But truly, we are both. They say it. We work together in almost all the different areas. For exception, for instance, financially, George is more involved on the financial part. And for instance, marketing, I'm more in the marketing. Besides the other parts of the business, winemaking, viticulture, commercial part, or events, both of us, we share. And I think it's so important to be two of us. There's, for instance, in the markets, we divide the markets, that we go both are present in the markets. For instance, for us, when we define a wine, what's the most important thing is to have a plan or to idealize the style of the wine, and then it's easy to build what we need to achieve that goal. And I think majority of all the aspects of winemaking or viticulture or commercial part, we work like this with a plan, and then let's start doing.
The richness of having two persons with the same focus, but with two different visions. We do not always agree about everything. So we disagree and we discuss to get a final decision. And safe to take decisions when you have two different visions for the same thing than having your own vision. And that's I think it's one of the reasons of the consistency of our wines is because we take very solid decisions.
Yeah. Two minds are always better than one. When you like, how does it work if you guys are working on the blend for, let's say, Pintage, and maybe your visions are not aligned?
Don't ask me that, please, Matthew.
Don't ask you that? Okay.
If you want to have a happy marriage, you should agree,
Tell my wife that, George. Okay. So yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I always find that interesting in family-owned wineries. Like, I had this, Jeremy Sace of Domaine Dujac shared this great story of when he works with his brother Alec, and on one vintage, it was more about in the vineyards they were not aligned on when to harvest. Alec was pushing Jeremy and saying, I think we should wait. I know it's been a tough one, but I think we just need to wait a longer. And Jeremy was saying, no, I think we need to pick, and blah blah blah. Alec finally convinced him to wait a few days. He said the reason he convinced him, and he said this very respectfully, was that, it's my feeling that it's been a very rough year, and you're kind of making this decision because you want to be done with the vintage rather than what's going to actually be the best for the wine. And Jeremy, in his great wisdom, said, I think you're right. I'm really tired and I want to be done with this year. And they waited a few days, and it turned out to be the right decision. So I love that story of how you reconcile when you're both equally invested in something like that.
Yeah.
But I won't ask you about it, George.
You did already, come on.
And George said we are not always in agreement, but especially when we are blending and we are tasting, the two of us. And sometimes I have my idea, George has his idea, but we have to, to show and to why we want to decide
prove.
this blend or that, or
To
to
convince
prove.
the
Exactly.
other one. Honestly,
Okay.
it's a very natural discussion. It's based on confidence, and it's very easy. Though, of course, it's not. We do not get on a point that I think the black is the right and Sandra thinks the white.
It's not totally
It's
opposite.
not like this. We are talking about small details.
It's small details.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It sounds like how I do with my wife. We compromise and do what she says. Easy.
Very easy.
I want to get you guys out of here and go back to your day. I know we all have busy days. So, Sandra, I'll start with you, but same question for both of you before we get out of here. If somebody is a fan of wine, but they've never tried Portuguese wine before, why should they try Portuguese wine?
As Portuguese wines, they give really very special flavors and a lot of different profiles that I think people are not expecting. And I think this diversity is really the magic of Portuguese wines.
George, I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah. So if you have a chance to taste a Portuguese wine, and first you have to think that in Portugal, the quality of the professionals that work on the wine has a very high standards. The winemakers, all the people that works on the wines, the technology we use is the same as the top regions in the world. And you have the advantage of getting a wine with a high level of quality plus different flavors and very unique flavors. So that's a great opportunity to taste something different that you could have very
surprise.
Great
can
surprise.
be surprised, definitely.
Well, I thank you both so much for joining and sharing your story. It's really an inspiration. And I'll say to all of you out there, do yourself a favor, get yourself some Portuguese wine, and even better, get yourself some chocopaya, get yourself some wine and soul, and you will drink deliciously. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you, Matthew. It was a great pleasure to be here.